So Jim Harbaugh happy with the way Josh Gaddis's offense worked in the win over Middle Tennessee, as we're joined now by the Blades beat reporter for the Michigan Wolverines, Ashley Bastock. And Ashley, as you look at what the Wolverines did, I think a couple things stand out. And Harbaugh talked about this, the fact that they ran close to 80 plays. But it wasn't just that they ran so many plays. They ran so many different plays that they really got a lot of film on what can work and what won't work.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing, right? Like, I think when a lot of fans watch this team, and a lot of reporters for that matter, we were like, what is this offense? Why are we playing Dylan McCaffrey and Shea Patterson at the same time, putting your second-string quarterback at wide receiver on, like, the third drive of the game? Seemed questionable at best, but, you know, I think that stuff is fine to work out the kinks when you're in a new offense in the first game of the year. When it becomes problematic is if this experimental type stuff keeps happening and being tricky for the sake of being tricky, which is what a lot of those kind of plays looked like. But the stuff that worked is when Patterson especially was looking for the receivers. And especially with Donovan Peoples-Jones out this past week, when he is back, knowing the receivers did this well in week one, it'll be really interesting. And I think that was the main bright spot in the offense for me, on top of the running backs and seeing how well they ran, even though the only rushing touchdown or the first rushing touchdown came from Dylan McCaffrey there in the second half.
It was interesting. We saw McCaffrey line up at receiver. We saw Shea Patterson line up at receiver. And that's one of those, as you said, kind of a gimmicky play that is really a gimmick for gimmick's sake. And unless you're actually going to throw the ball to one of the quarterbacks at a receiver, you can't continue to do that because defenses are just going to ignore it. Let's talk a little about that offensive line, though. Out with a couple of guys. You had a redshirt freshman starting at both tackle spots, and they did provide excellent protection for both Patterson and McCaffrey.
Yeah, those redshirt freshmen in Jalen Mayfield and then Ryan Hayes filling in at left tackle for John Runyon, who Jim Harbaugh said today he expects to be back. No official word on what exactly was wrong with him on Saturday or officially that he will play in Army, but it's looking promising. And Jim Harbaugh said today that Ryan Hayes got the offensive player of the game, so his first start and just a great opportunity. And he even opened up the possibility when he was asked about what are you going to do when John Runyon is back in the starting, in the starting lineup for Michigan. And he made it sound like it would be a possibility that Ryan Hayes is getting playing time at right tackle as well. So Jalen Mayfield, who is locked in that battle with Andrew Stuber for the right tackle starting spot, he may not be out of the woods just yet.
And we talked about this a little bit last week. You were very high on Zach Charbonnet going into the game against Middle Tennessee. We saw the reasons why, as he was a leading rusher for the Wolverines. He had 90 yards. And on Monday, Harbaugh even praised his blocking ability as well, which is why, as a freshman, you're able to get on the field if you can block.
Yeah, and Jim Harbaugh said that the running back unit as a whole was actually 100% in their pass protection and their blitz pickups, and Zach Charbonnet was a perfect 9 for 9. So really promising skill to have when you're a freshman, and you come in, it's your first college game. I'm sure he was all amped up. We haven't heard directly from Zach Charbonnet yet, so don't want to speak for how he was feeling, but I think that'd be a pretty normal feeling. And to come out, perform the way he did, lead the team in rushing with 90 yards, have 9 additional receiving yards. It's all looking really promising. And Jim Harbaugh even said, you know, I've been around pro backs that haven't been able to read pass protection as well as he has as a freshman.
And I think one of the big questions going into this season with this offense was how we're going to utilize the tight ends, because you have so many tight ends that Michigan has loved to use in the past. And what we saw against Middle Tennessee, not only could you continue to use those tight ends, but those tight ends really disguise what you're going to do formation-wise.
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of 12 personnel looks, and I think a lot of that is because Nick Eubanks adds a lot of versatility to this offense and his blocking, and he has the ability to make some of those tough catches. And Sean McCune, of course, scored a touchdown. So all good stuff. Of course, the tight ends have always been involved in Jim Harbaugh type of offenses, and they're still getting play in speed and space, which, as Josh Gaddis termed it in the spring, big speed and space was very much at play in week one.
Other side of the ball, defense. Look, the bad news is they gave up 21 points, but when you look at that a little bit closer, 14 of those came off of turnovers. The last touchdown came at the end of the fourth quarter against the backups. So the defense, particularly the cornerbacks, I thought played really well against the Blue Raiders.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was just some things being, tightened up, so to speak, and especially on those sudden changes and off of turnovers, which they were very much honest about that when they talked on Monday. Vincent Gray was like, hey, we know what we have to do, and they said that they're going to be tightening it up, and especially heading into Army, which is a totally different defensive assignment that these guys are going to see compared to what they'll see the rest of the year, what they saw in week 1.
Ambry Thomas named the defensive player of the game, and this was a guy that coming into the game, nobody's really quite sure what they're able to get out of him. He missed so much time during colitis during fall camp, and he came out, he had an interception. Originally ruled he had a fumble recovery as well. They since have changed that, but that doesn't take away from how well he played, everything considered, and even without everything considered, how well he played.
Exactly. I think, the thing that we've heard repeatedly is how happy this team was to see Ambry come out and perform the way he did. And it really was exciting because coming into the game, no one knew if he was even going to start. I mean, other than the people on the defense and in the secondary in particular. Aiden Hutchinson talked after the game on Saturday and was like, I didn't even know he was playing until like right before the game because I'm worried about the defensive line. So I think it was just great, his productivity, the way he performed when he came out there. And he said that he just views this colitis issue that he had in the offseason as just a setback. And, he feels like he's more like confident now that he got this first game out of his system and had his first full week, full go of practice.
Up next, the Army Black Knights, and Army is one of the few teams in football that can boast a winning record against Michigan. They were 5-4 all time against the Maize and Blue. Obviously, a lot of those wins came when Army was a powerhouse way back in the 30s and 40s. But this is an Army team that's a little bit on the rise, coming off an 11-win season. And whenever you play a Service Academy, you're going to talk about the same things. It's going to be a disciplined team. They're going to be a tough team. They're not going to give up. And they're going to throw a triple option at you that's very difficult to prepare. And coaches hate getting up for this because you throw everything out of the window for 1 week, and then the next week you got to throw everything back in the window because the triple option is just so unique and you don't see it week to week.
Right, and Brad Hawkins was asked about this repeatedly yesterday, about what you have to do as a DB when you're going against the triple option. And he said the biggest thing for them is making sure you're watching for the pass still, that most likely they're going to run. Army runs a lot, but to be sure that they don't, I believe he used the term like fall asleep in the middle of the game and miss an assignment. But, he said, we're used to watching for those run gaps anyway and watching our run fits. So he's at the bottom line, it's just like any other game, but just a little more concerns as far as not falling asleep on the passing game, I guess.
And certainly another slight concern about this Michigan team right now is the injury situation. You mentioned Donovan Peoples-Jones missed the Middle Tennessee game. John Runyon missed the Middle Tennessee game. A couple of guys left for a few plays during that game. Mm-hmm. You get past Army, then you got a week off. That bye week could be coming at a great time for this Michigan team to get healthy.
Yeah, it could. And it sounds like a lot of the injuries really aren't too serious. With John Runyon, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Jim Harbaugh said that they would be back, he thinks, right now at this point on Saturday. The only guy that he didn't really provide a definitive update on is Michael Dwumfor. So not sure, again, what any of these injuries have been that have kept guys out, including him. But he's the only one really that right now it sounds like there's a serious chance of him not playing in week 2. But, of course, a bye week this early in the season doesn't hurt on that front when you have that many guys either going out, taking a few plays off, whatnot.
Yeah, you don't want anything to be a lingering thing, a lingering concern, and really mess you up come October, November, which is what this Michigan team is pointing towards. So we know they're going to have better athletes than Army. What's going to be the key to victory for Michigan on Saturday?
I think it is going to be whether or not they have a lot of this experimental offensive stuff going on. I think that, like I said, I would kind of start getting concerned in this week if we're seeing some of these, as I said before, tricky plays for the sake of being tricky. But, hopefully the offense gets ironed out. Shea Patterson postgame on Saturday, his demeanor was more like it would have been after a loss. It was not super happy or super, high on the fact that they got a win, but I think it's good that your starting quarterback isn't satisfied yet because the offense, in my opinion, was far from satisfactory. And in week 1, I think that's pretty standard at this point.
And certainly one of the things that Shea was upset about was the fact that he put the ball on the turf a couple of times.
Yes. Lost
a couple of those fumbles. He was able to get back on top of a couple of them as well. And that's one of the things that Harbaugh talked about on Monday was Shea's got to secure the ball. That's going to be fixed.
Yeah, and he said Shea's got to do it, and Dylan McCaffrey has to do it. But bottom line, he also said he thought that Shea and Dylan did a good job when they were in the game with the big things, and that Shea had a couple really nice RPO reads, did a great job of communicating where blitzes were coming from and what kind of pass protection he was going to need, and especially when you have young offensive linemen, a young starting tailback, that's all great. And then he also mentioned he thought Dylan did a great job of running, and even mentioned Joe Milton, who came in there at the end when the game was out of reach. So he wasn't down on any of the quarterbacks too much. I think definitely when we heard Shea talk on Saturday, he was more down on himself than Jim Harbaugh was.
All right, thank you very much, Ashley Bastock from the Toledo Blade, for sharing her insights on the Michigan Wolverines.